Every single one of you has played against that guy, whether it was at a normal club event, casual Friday night gaming, or at a tournament. Everyone's had a bad experience. How the heck do we handle it to make sure that we never have to go through this nonsense again? Let's figure it out. So what's the heck is this video? Listen, everyone knows that Warhammer is a game of strategy. You got tactics, some dice luck. But there's a big part of the game that a lot of people just don't talk about, and that is the manners. So we're going to go through what is good game etiquette. A lot of times when you have bad experiences with people, it's not even them being a jerk. It's simply that people don't understand the expectations of the game versus what is required for the game. So everyone's played against a jerk who's a fun vampire, but they might not have had any idea what they did wrong. So we have to educate all of our opponents and ourselves on how to have a fun, good experience in Warhammer 40k. And the first rule of that is remembering everyone. Just remember this, if you remember nothing else. It's a two-player game. You're playing with another person. Yes, we're trying to dominate, we're trying to crush, we're trying to crump, all these things, but it's still a two-player game. And if you or your opponent is being in such a way that it is making it less fun for the other person, might be something wrong. So let's talk about what do we do in game prep. We got a couple things. First off, you approach the table, whether you're at a tournament, whether you're at your local club just for a pickup game, whatever. First thing, you should be organized and you need to be on time. All these games take a big chunk of time. Everybody's got jobs, everybody's got families, and a lot of times this is the hobby. This is the way that people like to chill and relax. And if they have set aside 4 hours to play a game and you're running 30 minutes late, well, that suddenly means that they have to rush the game. It can be a lot more stressful. It just takes away a lot of the joy of the game. So guys, for real, just be organized, be on time. Doesn't matter like how much time is actually happening in the game. It's just what your opponent is planning to take is the time they have to give. All right. Bring a clear army kit list. And you get bonus points if you pre-answer confusing questions. So one really beautiful example of this was at LVO this most past weekend. Innes Wilson, shout out to him, he did a great job. He took a army list that had, it was Blood Angels, but it took no specific blood or unique Blood Angel units, which meant that he was able to get the +1 to wound bonus off of Oath of Moment with it. And what he did is on his army list, it was very clear. At the top of it, he put a little star and he went ahead and pre-answered. He says, this is cleared by the LVO judges. Yes, as long as I have no specific Blood Angel units, I do get the bonus of the +1 to wound. So then there's no questions. Now, I'm not saying everyone needs to do that, right? But it was a very nice way just to head off and to make sure that no one was taking unawares of a really weird rule interaction. Which brings us on to our other rules. You need to know the rules of your army. Now, if you are a brand new player, I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to more established, more experienced people. You need to know your army rules. That doesn't mean that you need to know every single clause in the rules commentary or everyone else's rules. No one expects anyone to memorize everything in this game. Trust me, I know this game super stupid well, and there's a lot that I don't know, okay? So no one needs to know everything about the game, but you should know your rules. You should not have any, there should not be, especially if you're playing at like a tournament game, you should have your army rules memorized. That doesn't mean you can't look anything up, like if there's one little obscure fact, of course you can look it up, but you shouldn't need to look up every single stratagem, every single detachment ability. You should know your rules cold. And then lastly, and this is something that I highly recommend everyone does, and this is just something that's going to always encourage much better gameplay and make sure people aren't taken away by gotchas. I always do a pre-game rules rundown. So I let my opponent know my capabilities in my army. I let them know what my enhancements do, what my stratagems do, and I let them know any weird combinations of my on my units. So what I tell them is I say, hey, by the way, Dante gets +1 to advance and charge rolls to his unit. So since I could advance a charge, just be aware I could move 19 inches and then be at +1 to charge turn 1. So whatever you want to do with that information, do with it. Now, while I'm playing in the game, I'm not really telling them all this because I'm not trying to play the game for them, right? But I'm going to let them know pre-game just what to expect my army can do. I'm not going to tell them my game plan, but this really just make sure that no one has ever taken unawares and there's no feel-bads. You don't have to do this. It's just something I recommend. Now, during the game, what do we do? Number one thing that we do during the game is communication is freaking key. Whenever I'm moving my models, I'm telling my opponent what I'm doing. If I see that I accidentally left a model on a ruin, I don't just pick up the model and take it off of the ruin. I tell my opponent, oh, hey, I accidentally left this on the moon. Is it okay if I just scoot him off? Your opponent's always going to say yes. There's no problem with that. So just tell your opponent what you're doing. If you're trying to do an action, let your opponent know, hey, I'm going to set this unit up on the side here, and I'm going to do cleanse with them, or I'm going to do containment with them. That way, later on, if you accidentally say, oh, now I'm going to shoot this unit, your opponent, they don't have to do this, but what they can do and what I would do is they could say, weren't you going to contain with that unit? And you go, oh shit, of course I was going to contain. Thank you. So just communicate with your opponents. This really just goes a world of difference. And then we have dice transparency. Roll your dice where your opponent can clearly see them. And then pre-game, I always recommend defining what is a cocked dice, and then just stick to it, okay? So for example, some people I've played at tournaments, they say, hey, any dice that I roll that is not in the dice tray, or if it bounces out, I will always re-roll it. If it's not in the dice tray, it's not real to me. Cool. One of the things that I play with is I say, hey, as long as I can stack a dice on top of this dice and it doesn't slide off, then it's not cocked. That's something that I do. Other people say if it is not perfectly flat, it will always be re-rolled. And when you make these rules, it just makes it perfect so that no one's ever going to argue what is a cocked dice and what isn't a cocked dice. So just agree with it. It takes less than 5 seconds to decide what is a cocked dice. We just have that conversation. And then you never have to wonder, hey, why did my opponent tell me I needed to re-roll my 6, but he didn't have to re-roll his, right? So it just makes for better feels. Measuring accurately and transparently. If you guys are playing Warhammer 40k as a hobby and you're liking this game, get yourself a set of widgets and tools. So there are measuring tapes, right? Everyone knows what a measuring tape is, but they're not necessarily really accurate. Every single person has played against an opponent who is moving their model 6 inches, and because of the angle that they're holding the measuring tape at, they actually move it, 7.5 inches. That is not cool, and it's really, really frustrating to play against. Get a set of 6-inch measuring tools, get a set of 3-inch measuring tools. So like if I just put this on screen so you can see, this is a 3-inch measuring tool, and it's got a 2-inch side, and it's got a 3-inch side, and it's got a 1-inch side. So this is actually they gave us for the World Champs of Warhammer. It's actually really nice. But if I just put this on the table, then I want to do a 3-inch pile in, I just slide my model right next to it. I'm not taking an extra ½ inch from using measuring tape inaccurately. It really does make a world of difference. And if you're playing this way, it makes the game so much less annoying just to have an opponent who's like accurately measuring. So I highly recommend it. You can also get sticks for like 9 inches, 6 inches. It really just helps a ton. All right. Stay calm in rules disputes and use the TO. Listen, this is always going to happen in a complicated game like Warhammer 40,000. People will disagree on interpreting rules. However, the burden of proof of a rule is on the person making the claim. So if my claim is that, sorry, you can't pile in that direction because you must end the pile in closer to the closest enemy model, my opponent absolutely has the right to be like, that's not correct, show me that rule. At which point I should show them that rule. If I can't show them that rule, but I really know it's correct, call the freaking TO. The TO will settle all these things up. If you are making a claim, the burden of proof is on you to show it in writing or in the app or whatever. And if you have struggles, just call the TO. Don't fight, don't argue. That just leads to unnecessary bad feelings on the table when the TO's job is to make sure that this stuff doesn't happen. There's no reason to ever have conflict escalate. Don't be a dick if the TO overrules you either. I've been at tournaments where the TO has ruled wrong, and what I will do is I will go, okay, no problem. We'll play it like this, and then after the game, I'll go up to that TO, and I'll be like, hey, I believe your ruling was wrong. Let's discuss it. TOs have the final say. Just go along with what they do, and you'll have no problems. Then you go with respect your opponent. Guys, like I said in the beginning, this is a 2-player game. 40k is a game of 2 people working together to make sure both persons accomplish what they set out to accomplish. Doesn't mean you reveal your freaking game plan, but what it does mean is that you're playing the game together. If your opponent moves in such a way where they're saying, oh, hey, I want to make sure I avoid all of your overwatches, and they move models, and there's like one random overwatch that they didn't notice, you should tell them, hey, you've told me you don't want to be overwatched, so this line, I have an overwatch potential here. Now, if they don't say anything, if they don't mention they're trying to avoid overwatch, let them move. No problem. Let them make those decisions. I highly recommend, though, that you punish people's decisions, not their lack of knowledge. Leading us into, don't be a freaking sore loser or a gloating winner. Everyone's got bad dice rolls, guys. Yes, everyone has rolled Snake Eyes into Snake Eyes to fail that game-winning charge. When you cry and bitch and moan about it, that sucks the fun out of everything. When you say, "Oh, I only lost this game because of dice rolls," no, there are a lot of other things that happen to the dice. Don't be a drama queen. No one's ever going to fault you for saying, "Well, that really sucks." Okay, yeah, bad things happen in the game. No one's ever going to fault you if you say that. But if you're crying and moaning and saying, "Oh, the dice screwed me and you only win because of dice and blah, blah, blah," you just suck and no one's ever going to want to play against you. So don't be that guy. And if you are playing against someone who is being that guy, tell them. Let them know what they're doing. Seriously, like, we don't want to be confrontational, and I understand that we're not trying to cause fights, but if someone is being like a drama queen and just bitching and moaning, just let them know. Be like, "Hey, bro, like, you're kind of sucking the fun of it with all of your complaining. Do you mind, like, just toning that down?" It's okay to say that. So I tell that to my opponents. I'd be like, "Listen, bro, I've had bad rolls before, but like right now you're making the game much less enjoyable with all of your moaning. Do you mind if we just play the game?" I've done it, and it's made the games way freaking better. Most of the time, people don't even recognize when they're being so negative. So just give them a heads up. And then let's celebrate the cool freaking moments in the game. Even when things don't necessarily go your way, just enjoy the awesome moments of 40,000. My opponent once had a Gravis captain who survived my Angron charging him. Like, one Gravis captain survived Angron charging him. It was insane. It was dumb, and it lost me the game. But you know what? That freaking captain deserves a name on the table, and I helped my opponent name that Gravis captain. I'm not going to repeat what we named him on stream because it was not family friendly, but we named him. And because that was just a cool freaking moment that you couldn't ever plan or simulate. So don't be afraid just to celebrate the cool stuff in Warhammer 40,000. Then lastly, we have the post game. Clean up. Seriously, guys, especially when you're playing at tournaments. Get your models off the table. Set it up, set the table up for the next round so your opponent, the next people don't have to do it themselves. No one at these tournaments is your mother. None of these people are going to clean up after you. Do it yourself. If you're leaving like freaking snoofs or dip cans in places, you suck. Don't do that. And don't let your opponent do it either. Like, tell your opponent, "Bro, clean up your Coke can. That doesn't need to stay there. Go throw it away. It's fine." And then lastly, we want to reflect and criticize productively. So, for example, at the end of the game, what I'll often do, just because I'm a coach and I mean I have a very high win rate, what I always just give a little constructive feedback to my opponents. I'll tell them, "Hey man, if you had done this positioning, you actually would have had me," or "Hey, what do you think I could have done differently? Because I think this was a bad decision," so that you and your opponent can just discuss it. This is a great way to actually improve your skill and just have a great relationship with the people that you're playing with. And just here's the deal: the main things. I'm just gonna sequence it for you right now. Don't be a dickhead. It's not your freaking house. Clean up after yourself. And use the TOs. The TOs are your freaking friends. If there's a problem on the game, don't ever fight with your opponent. Just let the TOs handle it. If you think your opponent is cheating, call a TO. Be like, "Hey, bro, I think he's cheating." Boom. Done. Just do it that way. Had I followed all these rules when I first started, it would have been much easier for me to have gotten started. I do all of these things now, and honestly, my games are always fun. I've had like one bad experience in the last year, and that's it. So, hope you take this and you guys just have a great freaking time for the rest of your day. I know we do lots of strategies and tactics on this table, on this channel, because that's kind of the whole purpose of it. But sometimes when you're so deep in the strategies and the tactics and the competitive aspect of the game, you can forget like just the spirit of the game, which is we freaking love this and we have fun with it. So let's have a little bit of etiquette. Let's have a little bit of manners with our opponents, and let's just have a great freaking game of Warhammer 40,000. With that, I'm going to take off, and I hope you guys all have a great freaking day. Crump on. Bye-bye.